Young Mamori is a pathetic, disgusting loser for not eating his meal. He pleads and apologizes repeatedly, but his mother pays him no attention and leaves him to the mercy of his stepfather's feet. He suddenly wakes up on a bus as Ayaka, the class president, tells Oyamada to give back her novel. He makes fun of her reading preferences, surprised that she's actually into romance novels despite leading people to believe otherwise. She asks him if there's a problem with her choices, and he belittles her, saying he could never read something like that because his brain cells would evaporate. While the scuffle is going on, Hijiri notices that Itsuki, her younger sister, is lost in the mountain scenery outside, but she tells her to pay more attention to what's happening on the bus. Ayaka tells Oyamada to give back her novel since he isn't interested in it, but he's reluctant to grant her wish. He asks for her social media handle in return for the novel, but she declines his request. The bus was taking the class on their field trip, and while the banter between the president and Oyamada was going on, Mamori considered stepping in. Still, he realized he would be too insignificant to do anything effective. He decides to remain indifferent, just like the Tako sisters and their class teacher. Ayaka asks Oyamada to give back her novel once again, but he insists that she must share her social media handle with him before she can get back her novel. Ayaka remains persistent when Mamori suddenly gets up, telling Oyamada to give back her novel. While Oyamada was surprised that Mamori stood up for Ayaka, Mamori was even more surprised to see himself standing because he didn't know when his body moved on impulse. Oyamada recognizes him, but wonders what gave him the guts to tell him what to do. Mamori tries to reason with Oyamada, telling him to give back Ayaka's novel because she's getting annoyed by his mischief. Oyamada laughs off Mamori's show of chivalry and wonders where he suddenly got the confidence from. Takuto, one of the class elites, tells Oyamada to return Ayaka's novel, but Oyamada asks for some support in putting Mamori in his place. Tako tells him he has no interest in such frivolities, and Oyamada is jealous of Tako's cool aura. Takuto tells him he can ignore Mamori, but he must give back Ayaka's novel because it doesn't sit right with him. Ayaka commends Takuto for stepping up for Ayaka as Oyamada hands over the novel to her. Other students silently commend Takuto for being so nice despite being an elite student. Oyamada takes his seat behind Mamori and begins kicking his chair from behind, questioning what gave him the audacity to stand up to him. Mamori quivers in fear, apologizing for his earlier actions, but the teacher cuts in, telling him to quit bothering Mamori. Mamori was also surprised that he had the confidence to stand up to Oyamada, and he concluded that his dream was the cause because it put him on edge. While Oyamada complains about his grand moment being ruined by Mamori, the goddess chants an incantation that suddenly teleports all the students to a hall. They wonder if they're in some kind of dream as they all suddenly appear in an unknown location. The goddess viciously addresses them, welcoming them as heroes to Alan, her kingdom. She informs them that heroes are summoned to fight the great demon emperor anytime he appears. The demon emperor was once defeated 200 years ago by the combined efforts of heroes, but he was recently resurrected again, prompting the need for the summoning of new heroes. The goddess begs the new heroes from other worlds for their strength to take down such a big threat to her kingdom's prosperity. The students still have a hard time wrapping their heads around what the goddess is trying to say. Their teacher suddenly calms them down, reassuring them that everything will be all right since he's with them. Though he doesn't fully understand their present predicament, he tells them they need to pay attention to whatever the goddess says for clarity. The goddess thanks him for that, and he smiles sheepishly, trying to get into her good books. Mamori looks around, noting the stone walls, the old-fashioned bonfires, the armored soldiers, and the features of the goddess. Despite all he could see, he still wasn't convinced that they were in another world. Takuto wonders what will happen if they refuse to cooperate, and she tells them that they're stuck there, regardless, because she can't take them back to their world. Takuto asks her if there's a way back, and she tells him that it can only be done through the reverse summoning event, which requires a special magic element called the evil element. This element can only be obtained from the heart of the great demon emperor, or the absorbance of the elements released when the emperor perishes into a special necklace. Oyamada is pissed, wondering what the demon emperor has to do with them because they're from another world. The goddess gets on her knees, begging them to act as heroes and, become the messiah of everyone in her kingdom. And Ayaka explains to the goddess that they can't be of much help even if she considers them their messiah because they're just humans. The goddess tells them they have powers no other humans have, and Momori suddenly feels a strange tingling sensation. She explains that the powers were bestowed upon them as she summoned them to her world, but Oyamada doesn't believe her, and he tells her to stop playing pranks on them. The goddess orders her guard to release a demon wolf on a prisoner, which it wastes no time devouring. She then takes out the wolf using a fireball spell, which surprises everyone. The students are now convinced that they're in an entirely different world than the one they're used to. The goddess asks them to approach a crystal ball individually so their skills can be revealed to them. Each student approaches the ball, and their magic powers are appraised. When Oyamada approaches the ball and places his hand on it, it gives off a bright red color, which surprises the mages. Oyamada is so impressed with his skills shown off by the crystal that he decides to accept his inevitable role as the messiah of the new world. Takuto walks up to the crystal ball to measure his magic abilities, but the crystal ball gets so overloaded that it breaks. The goddess praises him for being an S-rank hero, and Doem runs over to her, wondering what rank he's in. She informs him that he's an A-rank hero, and he's disappointed that he couldn't outclass Takuto. Ayaka steps up to test her magic skills, and she also breaks the crystal ball, earning the S-rank. Hijiri follows suit, breaking the crystal and also earning the S-rank qualification. The goddess is amazed at the luck she had in just one summoning ritual, because getting an S-rank hero is very rare, but she managed to get 3 at once. Momori steps up to test his abilities, but the crystal ball only gives off a dull purple color, which makes the goddess conclude that he's insignificant. She ignores him and calls up the next person to detect their magic ability, and Momori walks away dejectedly because he's still treated like a background character even in a different world. He decides to accept that as his reality because he won't be getting any special treatment. Yasu steps up to measure his magic, and the goddess is impressed because he's giving off the same aura as the Dark Hero, who was one of the strongest heroes in the past. The goddess shows the heroes how to check their stats, and Momori decides to look at his stats. He's disappointed at how average his stats are, but he notices that he has the inherent skill of abnormal state endowment. The goddess explains that the inherent skill is unique to each individual, but Oyamada is fed up with her yapping and tells her to quit explaining. His teacher tries to put him in order, but Oyamada tells the teacher he has no right to talk to an A rank like that because he's just a D rank hero. The goddess informs them that they're about to perform an important ritual, and she calls Momori up, but he's not enthusiastic about it. The guards force him forward as the goddess explains that the lowest ranks in the past have a way of hindering the higher ranking heroes. These heroes decided that such heroes should be disposed of, and since Momori was the lowest in that group, that was his fate. The goddess doesn't want to dispose of Momori in front of his classmates, so she decides to give him a chance to redeem himself. She tells him that he'll be sent to some ruins using the magic circle, and that if he manages to get back up, he will be given the free will to live peacefully in Allen. Momori wondered if he was being sent to a dangerous place, and the goddess tells him the place is very dangerous because criminals and corrupted heroes have been sent to the ruins in the past. He decides to tell her about his inherent skill, which is the abnormal state endowment skill, hoping it will help him out of his predicament. She informs him that all abnormal state skills and spells have no value in Allen because their effects and duration are too weak and short. She informs him that his unique skill is a disappointment because he can't even use it to take down low-level demons. Momori is dejected by this, but the goddess piles on the insults, telling him it would be a waste of time to level up because his stats are too low to ever become significantly high. Momori couldn't understand why he was being subjected to such a horrible fate when everything was done against his will. He tried to protest against the goddess, but Takuto cut him off. Takuto tells him to accept his fate and get going so he doesn't keep everyone else waiting. Yasu goes over to Momori and extends a helping hand. Momori remembers all they've been through in the past and is glad that Yasu is on his side, but Yasu tells him to address him with more respect because he's a higher-ranked hero. He walks away as the goddess announces the commencement of the ritual. The circle begins to glow, and the goddess throws down a leather pocket, telling Momori that the pocket is his unique item. She tells him the orb on the pocket glows when infused with mana, which is all the pocket does. Akka suddenly protests the goddess's decision to send Momori to the ruins because he's their classmate. The goddess knocks her out while she tells everyone else to witness the fate of the only loser in their group. Momori is pissed by this, and he decides to attack the goddess with a paralyzed but it's dispelled by her magic bubble, which protects her against abnormal state spells. Momori's classmates make fun of him for being so powerless, and he's so pissed off that they have such low impressions of him. The Taco sisters walk away because they can't stand the humiliation that Momori is being put through. Momori has had enough of the goddess and his classmates looking down on him. He channels that frustration and tells the goddess to be ready for his revenge if he ever makes it back alive. As the ritual is completed and he disappears, he tries to check his stats, but the window refuses to come up because of lack of visibility. He locates his pocket in the darkness and pours mana into it, making it glow. He begins to make his way across the ruins when he stumbles upon some skeletal remains. Momori is now scared of the monsters that could be residing in the ruins. He suddenly dodges as a minotaur monster attacks him from behind. Momori decides to run away from the monster as fast as possible, trusting his instincts to lead him through because he can feel the murderous intent of the monster. He suddenly trips on a stone and falls to the ground, surrendering to his fate as a meal for the monster. He then remembers how his classmates look down on him, and he realizes that he wants power so he can teach them all a lesson. He uses his paralyzed skill on the monster, but he's surprised it worked. He decides to keep running, wondering why his spell worked when the goddess said it would be useless against low-level demons. Momori sums up his encounter as a miracle, but he comes upon a bird demon, and he could feel its intent to take him down. He uses his paralyzed skill again, and he's surprised that it worked. He reasons that his abnormal state skills are different from the other state skills known in Aelin. He realizes that he doesn't have much mana left, so he uses his poison skill on the demon bird. He's worried about what will happen if he keeps using his skills and drains his mana completely. He decides to rest for a minute, but the Minotaur appears again because his paralyzed skill has worn off. Momori wonders if someone will come to his rescue, but he remembers that no one ever comes to his aid. He decides to keep laying waste to the monsters so that he can stay alive for as long as possible. He's ready to begin the struggle for survival in the ruins as he makes up his mind to live. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.